What happens when a newlywed's life takes a devastating turn, uncovering a hidden web of secrets? Today, we explore a story that shocked investigators and tore a family apart. A story of forbidden love, betrayal, and a crime that led to an unimaginable tragedy. In this episode, we'll unravel the chain of events behind a newlywed wife's secret relationship with her stepdaughter, a discovery that spiraled into an act of violence. From the early signs of the affair to the intense criminal investigation and its aftermath, we'll examine the harrowing details of this case. What drove a family to the brink, and how did it culminate in murder? Let's dive into this chilling tale. Our story revolves around three key individuals whose lives intersected in ways no one could have foreseen. First, we have the newlywed couple, Mark and Julia Harris. Mark, a 38-year-old construction manager, was known for his hardworking and dependable nature. Friends and colleagues described him as a pillar of his small suburban community. He was a widower who had dedicated himself to providing a stable and loving environment for his teenage daughter, Emma. Emma, just 16 at the time, was a high school junior with big dreams of becoming an artist. Her teachers often praised her creativity, describing her as bright and full of potential. Despite losing her mother at a young age, Emma appeared to thrive under her father's care, enjoying school and spending her free time painting or volunteering at the local animal shelter. Then came Julia Harris, formerly Julia Taylor, a charismatic and lively woman in her early 30s. A former restaurant manager, Julia was known for her charm and her ability to connect with people. When Mark and Julia met through mutual friends, their connection was instant. After a whirlwind romance, they tied the knot, and Julia moved into Mark's home to start their life together. To the outside world, this blended family seemed happy, if not a little reserved. Mark was protective of Emma, and Julia appeared to step seamlessly into her new role as a stepmother. Neighbors frequently saw them gardening, walking their dog, or attending local community events. They painted the picture of a modern family trying to move forward from past hardships. But as with many families, complexities lay beneath the surface. Emma and Julia's relationship, though polite, seemed strained at times. Some family friends noticed that Emma, who was typically outgoing, grew quieter after Julia's arrival. Meanwhile, Mark often went out of his way to mediate between the two, hoping to foster a bond. Little did he know, the connection forming between his wife and daughter was far from what he imagined, and it would soon unravel their lives. The setting for this tragic story is the quiet suburban town of Pine Valley. Nestled in a picturesque part of state, Pine Valley is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Its tree-lined streets and neatly trimmed lawns exude the charm of a close-knit community. Residents take pride in their small-town values, attending Sunday church services and organizing annual neighborhood barbecues. For years, Pine Valley was free from the kind of violence that headlines urban newspapers. It was a place where doors were left unlocked and children played freely in the cul-de-sacs. That's what made the events that followed so shocking. It shattered the illusion of safety and exposed the dark realities hiding in plain sight.
The Harris family's home was situated on Willow Lane, a quiet street with a mix of modest single-family homes. Their house was unassuming but well-kept, with a small garden that Mark and Emma tended together. It was here, behind closed doors, that the relationships within the family began to shift in ways no one could have predicted.
To their neighbors, the Harrises were an ordinary family trying to rebuild after tragedy. Mark had endured the loss of his first wife with quiet strength, and Julia seemed to be a breath of fresh air for him. Emma, despite her reserved demeanor, was seen as a well-mannered and promising young woman. Julia, for her part, integrated quickly into the community. She joined the local book club, volunteered at the food pantry, and even organized a bake sale for the high school fundraiser. These activities gave her a positive reputation among residents, who admired her energy and willingness to contribute. But, as the investigation would later reveal, the idyllic image of the Harris family masked a much more complicated reality. Behind the walls of their Pine Valley home, relationships were evolving in ways that would ultimately lead to betrayal, heartbreak, and a crime that left everyone reeling. On the morning of July 14, 2023, a chilling discovery was made in the quiet suburban home on Willow Lane. Mark Harris, a 38-year-old husband and father, was found dead in the living room of his home. His body showed signs of a violent struggle, and the scene suggested he had been attacked late the previous night. It was Julia Harris, Mark's wife of just 2 years, who made the 911 call. She claimed she had been out running errands and returned home to find her husband unresponsive. The police arrived within minutes, and the once cozy Harris home was transformed into an active crime scene. The initial investigation seemed straightforward. Detectives interviewed Julia and Emma separately, but inconsistencies in Julia's account quickly raised suspicions. She claimed she had been at a nearby grocery store for over an hour, but surveillance footage showed she was there for only 10 minutes. Emma, on the other hand, seemed visibly shaken, but was cooperative, stating she had been asleep during the time of the incident. As investigators dug deeper, the case took an unexpected turn. During a routine examination of Mark's phone and computer, officers uncovered a series of encrypted messages exchanged between Julia and Emma. These messages revealed an illicit relationship between the stepmother and stepdaughter, a secret that had been hidden for over a year. The texts painted a picture of a relationship that began innocently but quickly escalated into something far more troubling. Julia and Emma expressed their love for one another and spoke of plans to leave Mark behind. In one chilling exchange, they discussed how their lives would be easier without him in the picture. Digital evidence also included photos, emails, and even a draft of a travel itinerary, showing plans for Julia and Emma to flee to another state. Investigators now had a motive. Mark had discovered the affair and confronted Julia, leading to a deadly confrontation. Neighbors later told police they had heard loud arguments coming from the Harris home in the weeks leading up to Mark's death. One neighbor recalled hearing Mark yell, "I know what you've been doing," but assumed it was just a domestic dispute. When confronted with this evidence, Julia's demeanor shifted. She became defensive and gave conflicting accounts of her whereabouts during the time of the murder. Emma, who had initially seemed cooperative, began to show signs of distress and refused further questioning. As the pieces came together, detectives theorized that Mark had confronted Julia and Emma about their relationship. This confrontation likely escalated into a physical altercation that ended with Julia attacking Mark. Forensic evidence supported this theory. Mark's injuries were consistent with a struggle, and Julia's fingerprints were found on the murder weapon, a heavy candlestick from the living room. Julia Harris was arrested 2 days later and charged with first-degree murder. Emma was also taken into custody as a person of interest, though her exact involvement remained unclear. The community of Pine Valley was stunned. What had seemed like a tragic burglary gone wrong was now revealed to be a deeply personal and horrifying crime. In the days that followed, more details emerged. Friends of Julia came forward, sharing that she had confided in them about feeling trapped in her marriage. They never suspected anything beyond marital dissatisfaction. Emma's friends, meanwhile, described her as secretive in the months leading up to the murder, often skipping school and avoiding social gatherings. The evidence against Julia was mounting, but questions remained. Did Emma play a role in the murder? Was she manipulated by Julia, or was she an equal participant in the deadly plan? These questions would become central to the trial, as prosecutors sought to untangle the truth from a web of lies. Detectives arrived at the scene on the evening of July 14th, and immediately began piecing together the events leading up to Mark Harris's death. The initial impression was that of a home invasion gone tragically wrong, drawers pulled out, belongings strewn across the floor, and a broken window at the back of the house. However, seasoned investigators quickly noted irregularities in the scene. The broken glass was scattered outside the home, suggesting the window was smashed from within. As detectives questioned Julia Harris, her demeanor raised suspicions. She appeared calm, even detached, and her account of the day's events was riddled with inconsistencies. Julia stated that she had left home around 8 p.m. to run errands, returning at approximately 10 p.m. to discover her husband's lifeless body. However, surveillance footage from a nearby grocery store revealed Julia leaving the premises at 8:20 p.m., with no explanation for the nearly 2-hour gap before her call to 911. Emma Harris, the 16-year-old stepdaughter, was next to be questioned. Initially, Emma seemed cooperative, describing her relationship with her stepmother as complicated but loving. She claimed to have been asleep when the murder occurred, but faltered when detectives pressed her on specific details. Her vague and hesitant responses hinted at deeper knowledge of the events. The investigation gained traction when forensic teams uncovered a key piece of evidence: the murder weapon. A heavy brass candlestick, bearing traces of blood and fingerprints, was found wrapped in a blanket and hidden in the attic. Tests confirmed the blood belonged to Mark Harris, and Julia's fingerprints were clearly identifiable on the surface. Further searches of the house led to the discovery of Julia's and Emma's phones. A forensic analysis of their digital communications revealed a shocking truth. The two had been exchanging encrypted messages for over a year, detailing their secret relationship and expressing growing frustration with Mark. One particular message from Julia read, "He's standing in our way. If only he wasn't here, we could finally be free." Detectives also found browser histories on Julia's laptop that included searches for quick and painless ways to kill someone and how to clean up after a murder. These searches, dated weeks before Mark's death, painted a damning picture of premeditation. Law enforcement then shifted focus to family members and neighbors. Mark's brother, Daniel Harris, told detectives he had recently noticed tension between Mark and Julia. He recalled Mark confiding in him about concerns regarding Julia's behavior, stating, "She's been distant and secretive. Something's not right, but I can't put my finger on it." Neighbors corroborated these suspicions, recounting frequent arguments emanating from the Harris household. One neighbor reported hearing a loud altercation just 2 nights before the murder, during which Mark was overheard yelling, "You're tearing this family apart." Interviews with Emma's close friends provided another layer of insight. According to one classmate, Emma had confided about her complicated feelings toward Julia, hinting at a connection beyond a typical stepmother-stepdaughter relationship. These statements added to the growing pile of evidence suggesting a deeply entangled motive for Mark's murder. By this point, the investigation had 2 primary suspects: Julia Harris and her stepdaughter, Emma. Julia's motive appeared multifaceted. Financial records revealed that Mark had a life insurance policy worth $500,000, with Julia listed as the sole beneficiary. In addition, the strained relationship and the discovery of her affair with Emma painted a clear picture of personal and emotional motives. Emma's involvement was less straightforward. While the digital evidence suggested she was complicit in the affair, her role in the murder itself remained unclear. Prosecutors theorized that Emma, influenced by Julia, may have acted out of loyalty or fear. Messages from Julia to Emma included phrases like, "We can't let him ruin what we have," and "You're the only one I trust." As the evidence mounted, Julia was arrested on charges of first-degree murder, with Emma detained as an accessory. The community was left reeling, struggling to reconcile the horrifying truth with the image of the family they thought they knew. The investigation phase was exhaustive, spanning weeks of interviews, evidence collection, and forensic analysis. Detectives worked tirelessly to piece together a narrative that would hold up in court, ensuring justice for Mark Harris and uncovering the full extent of Julia and Emma's roles in his tragic death. As the investigation unfolded, law enforcement began piecing together a theory that centered on manipulation, secrecy, and a calculated plan. Police believed Julia Harris orchestrated every aspect of the crime, leveraging her control over Emma to conceal their illicit relationship. Julia's text messages and journal entries painted her as a manipulative figure, promising Emma a fresh start far away from the constraints of their current life. Detectives theorized that Julia convinced Emma that Mark Harris was a barrier to their happiness, a barrier that needed to be removed. By presenting herself as the only person who truly cared for Emma, Julia likely created an emotional dependence. This dependency was evident in Emma's messages, where she repeatedly expressed fear of losing Julia's affection. One of the most damning pieces of evidence supporting this theory was Julia's search history, which included phrases like convincing someone to lie and how to influence decisions. Police believed these searches revealed Julia's premeditated attempts to manipulate Emma into complicity, ensuring the crime appeared to be a random act of violence rather than a calculated murder. Despite the compelling evidence against Julia, the case became more complicated as alternative perspectives emerged. Some investigators and experts questioned the extent of Emma's involvement. Was she coerced into participating, or did she act willingly? Friends and teachers described Emma as a vulnerable teenager who had experienced significant upheaval in her life. Losing her biological mother at a young age and adjusting to her father's remarriage left Emma in a fragile emotional state. Julia may have exploited this vulnerability, gradually grooming Emma under the guise of affection. However, others suggested Emma might not have been as innocent as she appeared. Forensic analysis revealed messages where Emma expressed anger toward her father, calling him controlling and accusing him of interfering in her relationship with Julia. This raised the possibility that Emma, while young, may have been a willing participant, driven by a mix of loyalty to Julia and resentment toward Mark. Further complicating the narrative was Emma's behavior during police interviews. While she initially appeared hesitant and confused, her later statements included chilling admissions that indicated foreknowledge of the crime. In one exchange, Emma admitted Julia had spoken about a plan to fix everything weeks before the murder. Emma claimed she didn't believe Julia was serious, but failed to report these conversations to anyone. As the case gained national attention, it sparked widespread debate and skepticism. Many in the public questioned whether Julia acted alone or had outside help beyond Emma. Could another individual have assisted in planning or executing the murder? Some speculated about the role of a third party after unexplained evidence surfaced. A set of fingerprints, unidentified during the initial investigation, was found on the handle of the candlestick murder weapon. While the fingerprints did not match Julia or Emma, investigators could not tie them to any known associates of the family. This discovery left a critical question unanswered. Was there someone else involved? There were also questions about the timeline. If Julia and Emma planned the murder together, why did Emma remain hesitant during the crime? One theory suggested Emma was pressured into last-minute involvement, only realizing the gravity of the situation after it was too late to back out. Others argued Emma's behavior was consistent with someone experiencing internal conflict, torn between her feelings for Julia and the reality of their actions. The trial only added to the speculation. During cross-examination, Julia's defense team portrayed her as a desperate woman caught in a toxic relationship with Mark, suggesting he was emotionally abusive. They argued that her actions, while indefensible, were born out of desperation rather than malice. This claim, however, did little to sway public opinion. Many believed Julia's carefully constructed image in court was yet another attempt to manipulate those around her. The discovery of her explicit messages to Emma and detailed plans for their new life left little doubt about her intentions. Meanwhile, Emma's role remained a topic of fierce debate. Advocacy groups called for leniency, citing her age and Julia's influence as mitigating factors. Opposing voices argued Emma's participation in the cover-up showed a level of awareness inconsistent with being a passive victim. The divide in public opinion mirrored the unresolved questions that lingered even as the trial concluded. Theories about the crime continue to evolve as new details emerge, but one thing remains clear. This was a case shaped by manipulation, secrecy, and tragedy. Whether Emma was a victim of Julia's control or a willing accomplice, the Harris family's story leaves behind more questions than answers. The search for truth in this case serves as a sobering reminder of the complex dynamics that can lie beneath the surface of a family. As we move into the trial and resolution of this case, we'll explore how the legal system addressed these unanswered questions and the consequences for both Julia and Emma. The trial of Julia Harris captivated the nation, drawing intense public and media scrutiny. Prosecutors presented a strong case, detailing the methodical planning and execution of Mark Harris's murder. They painted Julia as a calculating individual who orchestrated the crime not only to remove her husband, but also to pursue a life with Emma, her stepdaughter. Text messages, financial records, and digital correspondence formed the backbone of the prosecution's argument. They highlighted Julia's desperate financial situation, with mounting debts and a significant life insurance policy on Mark, a clear motive for the crime. The murder weapon, a candlestick found hidden in the home, was presented as irrefutable physical evidence linking Julia directly to the act. Defense attorneys countered by attempting to shift blame, suggesting Emma had acted independently or at least contributed significantly to the crime. They characterized Julia as a woman trapped in an unhappy marriage, suggesting her involvement stemmed from emotional instability rather than malicious intent. Despite their efforts, Julia's own words, captured in messages to Emma and detailed plans for their life together, left little room for reasonable doubt. After weeks of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy. Julia Harris was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The court's decision reflected the severity of her actions and the calculated nature of her crimes. Emma Harris's legal fate was more complex. As a minor at the time of the crime, her involvement sparked debates about culpability and coercion. Prosecutors ultimately opted for leniency, charging her as an accessory after the fact. Emma was sentenced to 5 years of probation, with mandatory counseling and community service. The court acknowledged her vulnerability and Julia's influence while holding her accountable for her role in the cover-up. In the quiet suburban town where the Harris family once lived, the case left an indelible mark. What began as a tragic story of betrayal and murder quickly became a cautionary tale about trust, deception, and the dangers that can lurk within seemingly ordinary lives. Neighbors who once viewed the Harris family as unremarkable found themselves grappling with feelings of disbelief and betrayal. Many struggled to reconcile the family they thought they knew with the horrifying truths that emerged during the trial. Community leaders held town meetings to discuss the case, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and open communication in families. Schools in the area implemented programs aimed at identifying signs of emotional manipulation and abuse, hoping to prevent similar tragedies. Counselors were made available to students and parents, as the case had raised awareness of the vulnerabilities young people face in complex family dynamics. The case also sparked broader conversations about the legal and moral responsibilities of adults in positions of power and trust. Julia's actions highlighted how manipulation can exploit emotional dependencies, prompting local organizations to advocate for stronger protections for minors in blended families. For years to come, the Harris case would be referenced in discussions about family dynamics, legal accountability, and the need for community vigilance. Though justice was served in the courtroom, the scars left behind by this tragedy continue to serve as a stark reminder of the hidden complexities that can lie beneath the surface of a family's life. As we close this chapter, the story of Julia and Emma Harris stands as a haunting example of how love, betrayal, and violence can intertwine, leaving lives shattered and communities forever changed. After everything we've uncovered, it's impossible to ignore the profound emotional toll this case has taken on everyone involved. Mark Harris's family, his parents, siblings, and friends, must now reconcile the image they had of him with the shocking and brutal way his life was cut short. No amount of justice can bring him back, and their grief will forever be shaped by the circumstances of his death. The trauma of losing a loved one is a pain that no one should have to experience, and for the Harris family, that pain is compounded by the betrayal of someone they trusted implicitly, Julia, the woman who promised to care for him. For Emma Harris, her life will never be the same. As a young woman, the weight of her involvement in this crime will stay with her long after the legal consequences have faded. While she was ultimately given a more lenient sentence, the emotional scars will remain. She was, after all, caught between love and manipulation, and her future will always be marked by the darkness of that secret. A life stolen by deception and violence has a ripple effect far beyond the courtroom. The community, too, was shaken to its core. The neighborhood that once saw the Harris family as just another suburban household now looks at their own relationships with a new lens. How could something so horrific happen in their midst? For many, the case served as a chilling reminder that even those closest to us can harbor secrets that can lead to unimaginable consequences. It's a stark lesson about trust and the importance of being vigilant, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of those we care about. Cases like these remind us of the importance of recognizing the warning signs when relationships take a dark turn. Manipulation can be a slow and insidious force, eroding the bonds between family members, friends, and loved ones. It's crucial that we not only listen to what's being said, but also to what's not. Are there signs of control or isolation? Are there secrets that seem to hang in the air, unspoken and untouchable? If you or someone you know is in a situation where manipulation or coercion is at play, it's never too late to seek help. Reaching out to a trusted friend, family member, or professional can make all the difference in preventing something far worse from occurring. Don't ignore your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it's okay to ask questions and seek support. The tragic events surrounding the Harris family serve as a powerful reminder of how easily lives can be upended when hidden motives go unchecked. Let's honor the memory of Mark Harris by staying vigilant, by recognizing the dangers that lie beneath the surface of our relationships, and by taking steps to protect those we love before it's too late.